The hallway was silent except for the soft echo of footsteps on marble floors. Inside the private study at Kensington Palace, Prince William sat across from his trusted advisor, deep in conversation. The door was locked. The meeting was confidential. No one was supposed to interrupt, but someone was coming. Down the corridor, heels clicked with determination. Camilla, the queen consort, moved quickly, her face tight with purpose. She had heard whispers about this meeting. She knew William was making decisions. Decisions that could affect her position. Decisions she wanted to influence before it was too late. She reached the heavy oak door and placed her hand on the handle. It didn't turn. Locked. She knocked, firm and insistent. No answer. She knocked again, louder this time. Then she saw him. Standing just a few feet away, perfectly still, was a guard. Not just any guard. Sergeant Marcus Hale, 38 years old. 15 years of service. A man who had protected the royal family through scandals, threats, and endless public scrutiny. His uniform was crisp. His posture was flawless. His eyes were calm but watchful. Camilla straightened her shoulders. "Open the door," she said. Her voice was polite but firm. The kind of voice that expected obedience. Marcus didn't move. "I'm sorry, ma'am. The prince is in a private meeting. No interruptions." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I understand. But this is important. He'll want to hear what I have to say." Marcus shook his head slowly. "My orders are clear. No one enters until the meeting is over." Camilla's smile faded. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes, ma'am." "I do. Then you know I have the authority too." "My authority comes from the prince," Marcus interrupted gently. "And his instructions were very specific. Before you continue watching, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story like this. Trust me, you'll want to see how this unfolds." Camilla's jaw tightened. She wasn't used to being told no, especially not by someone in uniform. She took a step closer, her voice dropping to something colder. "I don't think you understand the situation. Move aside." Marcus didn't flinch. He had been trained for moments like this, not just physical threats, but political ones. Moments where loyalty was tested, where doing the right thing could cost you everything. "I'm afraid I can't do that," he said quietly. Inside the study, William continued talking, unaware of the confrontation just beyond the door. He was discussing changes. Important changes, the kind that would shift power within the family. The kind that some people would do anything to stop. Camilla stared at Marcus for a long moment. She could see it in his eyes. He wasn't going to move. Not for her title. Not for her status. Not for anything. She leaned in slightly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're making a mistake." Marcus met her gaze without blinking. "Perhaps, but it's my mistake to make." The tension in the hallway was thick enough to cut. Two people. Two different kinds of power. One door between them and a meeting that could change everything. Camilla stepped back, but she didn't leave. She stood there, arms crossed, waiting, watching. Her presence alone was a form of pressure, a reminder that she wasn't going anywhere. And Marcus, he remained exactly where he was, silent, steady, loyal. But inside his heart was pounding, because he knew something Camilla didn't. This meeting wasn't just important, it was dangerous. And the people inside were discussing things that could tear the royal family apart. The question was simple. How long could he hold the line before everything exploded? Minutes passed like hours. Camilla remained in the hallway, her eyes fixed on Marcus. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't threatening. She was simply there, waiting. It was a tactic she had perfected over the years. Quiet pressure, the kind that wore people down. Marcus had seen it before. He had watched powerful people use silence as a weapon. But he had also learned something important during his years of service. Silence worked both ways. He stood motionless, his hands clasped behind his back, his expression neutral. He could feel the weight of her stare, but he didn't react. His job wasn't to argue. It wasn't to explain. It was to protect. And right now, that meant protecting William's privacy. Behind the door, voices rose and fell. William was speaking quickly now, his tone urgent. His advisor responded in measured tones. They were discussing something complex. Something that required absolute focus. The kind of conversation that couldn't afford interruptions. Camilla shifted her weight, glancing at her watch. She had been standing there for nearly 10 minutes. Her patience was wearing thin. She wasn't used to being ignored. In her world, people moved when she appeared. Doors opened. Schedules changed, but not today. She took a slow breath and tried a different approach. Her voice softened, became almost conversational. "You seem like a good man, Sergeant. Dedicated. Loyal. Those are rare qualities." Marcus didn't respond. "I respect that," she continued. "I really do. But you have to understand. Family matters are complicated. Sometimes the people we're trying to protect need guidance. They need perspective. Especially from those who have been around longer. Still nothing." Camilla's fingers drummed lightly against her arm. "William is young, passionate. Sometimes passion clouds judgment. I'm only trying to help." Marcus finally spoke, his voice calm. "The prince is perfectly capable of making his own decisions." "Hey," Camilla asked. There was something sharp in her tone now. "Or is he being influenced by people with their own agendas?" Marcus felt a flicker of anger, but kept it buried deep. He knew what she was implying. That William was being manipulated. That he needed her wisdom. Her control? The prince surrounds himself with trusted advisors, Marcus said carefully. People he has chosen. "And who are you to decide who he listens to?" Camilla asked. "I'm not deciding anything. I'm following orders. Orders that keep me out. Orders that keep everyone out." Camilla's eyes narrowed. She was done being polite. "You do realize there will be consequences for this. I don't forget faces. I don't forget names." Marcus felt a cold weight settle in his chest. He had heard stories. Stories about people who had crossed her. People who had found their careers quietly ended. Transfers to remote locations. Early retirements. Nothing dramatic. Nothing provable. Just a slow erasure. But he had also made a promise. A promise to protect the royal family. Not just from physical threats, but from anything that could harm them. And right now, he believed this meeting needed to happen without interference. "I understand, ma'am," he said quietly. Camilla studied him for a long moment. She could see the fear in his eyes hidden beneath the professional mask. But she could also see something else. Resolve. The kind that didn't break easily. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. "You're protecting the wrong person." Before Marcus could respond, the door handle turned. The lock clicked. The door opened. William stood in the doorway, his face calm but his eyes sharp. He looked at Camilla, then at Marcus. He understood immediately what had happened. "Camilla," he said. His voice was polite but distant. "Is there something you need?" She straightened, composing herself instantly. The frustration vanished, replaced by a warm smile. "William, darling, I was hoping we could talk. Just for a moment." William glanced at Marcus. Their eyes met. A silent conversation passed between them. Marcus's expression said everything. She tried to interrupt. I stopped her. I did my job. William turned back to Camilla. "I'm in the middle of something important. Perhaps later?" "This is important too," she pressed. William's expression didn't change. "Later?" It wasn't a request. It was a dismissal. Camilla's smile tightened. She nodded once, gracefully accepting defeat. "For now, of course. We'll talk soon." She turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing down the marble corridor. But as she disappeared around the corner, she glanced back. Just once, her eyes found Marcus. The message was clear. This isn't over. William stepped back into the study, leaving the door slightly open. Marcus remained at his post, but he could hear the conversation inside resume. The prince's voice was steady, but there was a new tension beneath it. "She knows something," William said quietly. His advisor, a silver-haired man named Thomas Whitmore, nodded slowly. She's always known how to read a situation. The question is how much she's guessed. Marcus stood perfectly still, his eyes fixed on the empty corridor. But his mind was racing. What had he just protected? What was being discussed behind that door that made Camilla so desperate to interrupt? Inside, William paced slowly. We need to move faster. If she suspects what we're planning, she'll try to stop it. She doesn't have the authority, Thomas replied. She doesn't need authority. She has influence. She has the king's ear. William stopped walking, and she has patience. She'll wait for the perfect moment to strike. Marcus had heard enough. Too much, actually. But he couldn't unhear it now. The royal family was divided. There were plans being made, moves and countermoves, and somehow he had just become a piece on the board. 20 minutes later, the meeting finally ended. Thomas left through a side door carrying a leather briefcase. William emerged and found Marcus still standing guard. Thank you, William said quietly. Marcus nodded. Just doing my job, sir. William studied him for a moment. You know she'll remember this. I know. And you're prepared for what that means? Marcus met his gaze directly. With respect, sir, I'm more concerned about doing what's right than what's safe. Something shifted in William's expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. He placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder briefly. The family needs more people like you. Then he walked away, leaving Marcus alone in the corridor. But Marcus wasn't alone for long. Within an hour, the whisper started. Other guards glanced at him differently. Staff members who usually greeted him warmly now avoided eye contact. By the end of the day, his supervisor called him into an office. Captain Reynolds was a stern man with gray temples and a reputation for fairness. He sat behind his desk, hands folded, expression unreadable. I heard about today, he said. Marcus remained standing. Yes, sir. The Queen Consort is not pleased. I understand, sir. Reynolds leaned back in his chair. Do you? Because I'm not sure you do. You just made a very powerful enemy. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. I followed my orders. The prince instructed. I know what the prince instructed, Reynolds interrupted. And technically, you did nothing wrong. Technically, he emphasized the word. But this job isn't just about following orders, Marcus. It's about navigating a complex environment. It's about understanding that sometimes the people we serve have conflicting interests. So what should I have done? Let her interrupt. Reynolds sighed. I'm not saying you should have. I'm saying there were other ways to handle it. Ways that wouldn't have made her feel disrespected. Marcus felt anger rising in his chest. She wanted in. I kept her out. That was my job. Your job is to protect the family. All of them, even when they're working against each other. The question hung in the air. Reynolds didn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer, especially then. Marcus left the office feeling hollow. He had done his job. He had been loyal. He had followed orders. But somehow it wasn't enough. Somehow he had still failed. He went home that night to his small flat in London. His wife Sarah was waiting for him. She took one look at his face and knew something was wrong. What happened? She asked. Marcus sat at the kitchen table and told her everything. The confrontation, the meeting, the warnings. When he finished, Sarah was quiet for a long time. Are they going to fire you? She asked finally. I don't know, maybe. Sarah reached across the table and took his hand. You did the right thing, did I? Because it doesn't feel like it. Protected someone who needed protecting. You stood up to someone powerful. That takes courage. Marcus looked at his wife. They had been married for 12 years. She had supported him through every difficult assignment. Every late night, every moment when he questioned whether this job was worth it. Afraid, he admitted. Not of losing the job, but of what comes next. If she really wants revenge. Sarah squeezed his hand. Then we'll face it together. But as Marcus lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, he couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was coming. He had stood in Camilla's way. He had denied her. And people like her, didn't forgive. They waited. They planned. And when the moment was right, they struck. The question was when. And how hard. 3 days passed. Marcus went to work each morning, expecting the worst. A transfer. A suspension. Something. But nothing happened. The palace carried on, as it always did. Tourists gathered outside the gates. Staff moved efficiently through their routines. Everything seemed normal, but Marcus could feel it. The shift. The way certain people looked at him. The conversations that stopped when he entered a room. He wasn't imagining it. He was being watched. On the 4th day, he was assigned to a different post. Not his usual position near the private family quarters. Instead, he was sent to the East Gate, a public entrance. Tourist crowds. Selfie requests. The kind of assignment given to junior guards or those being quietly pushed aside. He didn't complain. He stood at his post, professional as always. But he understood the message. You're being moved, slowly, carefully, but definitely that afternoon. During his break, another guard approached him. James Chen, a good man. Someone Marcus considered a friend. James sat down next to him in the break room and lowered his voice. I heard something. Marcus looked up. About? About you. About what happened? James glanced around to make sure they were alone. There's a formal complaint being filed. Marcus felt his blood go cold. What kind of complaint? Insubordination. Disrespect to a senior member of the royal family. James's face was grim. It's coming from her office. Not directly from her, but from her private secretary. I followed orders, Marcus said, his voice tight. I know, but that's not how they're framing it. They're saying you were unnecessarily aggressive, that you could have handled the situation with more tact. James paused. They're building a case. Marcus closed his eyes. This was how it worked. No dramatic firing, no public confrontation, just a slow accumulation of complaints. Questions about his judgment. Concerns about his attitude. Until finally, there were enough marks on his record to justify letting him go. What should I do? Marcus asked. James shook his head. I don't know, mate. But be careful. Document everything. Every shift. Every interaction. Because they're going to be looking for reasons. That night, Marcus went home and told Sarah. She listened quietly, her face growing more concerned with each detail. Can William help? She asked. I don't know. Maybe. But asking him puts him in an impossible position. He can't be seen publicly defending a guard against his stepmother. The press would destroy him. Sarah bit her lip. So you're on your own. It looks that way. But Marcus wasn't completely alone. The next morning, he received a message. Not through official channels. A simple note, handwritten, slipped into his locker. Meet me. Queen's Gardens. 2 p.m. Come alone. W. William. Marcus's hands trembled slightly as he read the note. He folded it carefully and put it in his pocket. The rest of the morning crawled by. Every minute felt like an hour. At 2 o'clock, Marcus walked through the palace gardens. It was a gray afternoon. Few people were around. He found William standing near a fountain, hands in his pockets, staring at the water. Thank you for coming, William said without turning around. Of course, sir.
William.
There were shadows under his eyes. He looked tired, older than his years. I've heard about the complaint, Marcus nodded. So have I. I want you to know I didn't approve of it. I didn't even know it was happening until yesterday. William's jaw tightened. This is retaliation. Pure and simple. With respect, sir, you don't need to? Yes, I do. William cut him off. You protected my privacy. You did exactly what I asked you to do. And now you're being punished for it. He turned to face Marcus fully. That's not acceptable. What can you do? Marcus asked quietly. William was silent for a moment. Officially. Very little. If I intervene directly, it escalates the situation. It becomes a public battle between me and Camilla. And that's exactly what certain people in the press are waiting for. Marcus felt his hope deflating. So I'm expendable. No, William's voice was firm. You're not. But we have to be smart about this. He pulled a business card from his pocket and handed it to Marcus. This is my personal lawyer, Jonathan Ashford. He specializes in employment law. I've already briefed him on the situation. Sir, I can't afford it's handled. The fees are taken care of. William's expression softened. You stood up for me when it mattered. I'm not going to abandon you now. Marcus felt something tight in his chest loosen slightly. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get ugly. Camilla doesn't give up easily, and she has resources. William paused. But so do I, and more importantly, the truth is on your side. You followed proper protocol. You did your job. That matters. They talked for a few more minutes. William explained that there would be an internal investigation, that Marcus should cooperate fully, but also document everything, that he shouldn't speak to anyone without the lawyer present. As they were about to part, William said something that Marcus would remember forever. My mother used to say that real loyalty isn't about blindly following orders. It's about doing what's right, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. William met his eyes. You've shown real loyalty. Don't let anyone make you doubt that. Marcus walked back to his post feeling stronger. Not safe, not secure, but stronger. He had an ally. He had support. And he had the truth. But what he didn't know was that Camilla had already made her next move, and it was more ruthless than anyone expected. The article appeared 2 days later. Not in a major newspaper. Too obvious. Instead, it was published on a popular gossip website, the kind that specialized in royal rumors and anonymous sources. The headline read, Palace Guard under investigation for aggressive behavior toward Queen Consort. Marcus saw it when James showed him during their morning break. His stomach dropped as he read. The article didn't name him directly, but it gave enough details that anyone inside the palace would know exactly who they were talking about. It described a confrontation between a guard and Camilla. It quoted palace insiders saying the guard had been unnecessarily hostile and failed to show proper respect. But the worst part was the ending. The article suggested that this wasn't an isolated incident, that there had been other complaints about this guard's attitude, that he represented a larger problem with palace security culture. None of it was true, but it didn't matter. The story was out there now, spreading. Marcus's phone buzzed constantly. Friends sending him the link, asking if it was him. His supervisor called him into an emergency meeting. Captain Reynolds looked even more grim than before. Have you seen it? Reynolds asked. Yes, sir. This changes things. Now there's public attention. The palace press office is getting calls. Reynolds rubbed his temples. They're going to have to respond. And when they respond, they're going to have to address the complaint formally. It's all lies, Marcus said, his voice shaking with anger. I was professional. I followed orders. I believe you. But the court of public opinion doesn't care about the truth. They care about the narrative. Reynolds looked genuinely sympathetic. I'm sorry, Marcus, but I'm recommending you be placed on administrative leave while the investigation proceeds. Marcus felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. Leave? For how long? Until we can sort this out. Could be weeks. Could be longer. That's exactly what she wants, Marcus said bitterly. To push me out? To make an example of me? Reynolds didn't deny it. Probably. But my hands are tied. This isn't coming from me. It's coming from the top. Marcus left the office in a daze. He cleaned out his locker, turned in his security badge, walked out of the palace gates knowing he might never come back. Sarah was waiting for him at home. She had seen the article too. She wrapped him in a hug and didn't let go for a long time. Going to fight this, she said fiercely. We're not giving up. Marcus wanted to believe her, but he felt defeated, tired. What was the point of fighting when the other side had all the power? That evening, his phone rang. Unknown number. Is this Sergeant Hale? The voice was professional, calm, male. Yes, this is Jonathan Ashford. Prince William's attorney. "I've been expecting your call, but I thought I'd reach out first." Marcus sat up straighter. "Thank you. I wasn't sure I've seen the article. And I've already filed a defamation notice with the website." Ashford's voice was brisk, businesslike. "They have 48 hours to retract the story and issue a public apology, or we proceed with legal action. Can you do that?" "Absolutely. The article makes false claims. It implies misconduct without evidence. It damages your reputation." Ashford paused. "But more importantly, we're going to file a formal complaint against the Queen Consort's office for harassment and retaliation." Marcus felt a surge of hope. "Will that work?" "It sends a message. That you're not backing down, that you have representation, that there will be consequences for false accusations." Ashford's tone shifted slightly. "But I need to be honest with you. This is going to be a long fight, and it's going to get messy. Are you prepared for that?" Marcus thought about William, about his mother's words, about doing what's right even when it's hard. "Yes," he said. "I'm ready." Over the next week, things escalated quickly. The website retracted the article, but didn't apologize. Ashford filed the formal complaint. The Palace Press Office issued a carefully worded statement, saying all personnel matters were handled internally and appropriately. But behind the scenes, the real battle was happening. William met with his father, King Charles. It was a difficult conversation. Charles was caught between his wife and his son. Between loyalty to Camilla and fairness to Marcus, he didn't want to take sides, but William forced him to see the truth. "This is abuse of power," William said firmly. "A guard did his job, followed my orders, and now he's being destroyed because Camilla didn't get her way." Charles was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "What do you want me to do?" "Stop this. Order the investigation closed. Reinstate him with full honors, and Camilla will have to accept it. She was wrong, and she needs to understand there are limits to her influence." It wasn't easy. There were more meetings, more arguments, but slowly the tide began to turn. 2 weeks after Marcus was placed on leave, he received an official letter. The investigation had been closed. No evidence of misconduct had been found. He was cleared of all charges, and he was being reinstated immediately, but there was more. The letter included a formal apology from the palace, and a commendation for his exemplary service and unwavering professionalism. Marcus read the letter 3 times. Sarah cried. They held each other in the kitchen, overwhelmed with relief. But Marcus knew this wasn't really over. Camilla had lost this battle, but she hadn't forgotten. And people like her never really forgave. The question was whether Marcus could live with that. Whether he could return to work knowing that a powerful enemy was still watching, still waiting. Marcus returned to work on a Monday morning. The palace felt different somehow. Or maybe he was the one who had changed. He walked through security, collected his badge, and reported to Captain Reynolds. Reynolds shook his hand firmly. "Welcome back." "Thank you, sir. Your post is waiting." Same position. Same responsibilities. Reynolds paused. "And Marcus, you handled this with dignity. I'm proud to have you on the team." Those words meant more than Reynolds probably knew. Marcus returned to his position near the private family quarters. Other guards greeted him with respect, some even with admiration. Word had spread about what happened, about how he had stood his ground, about how he had fought back and won, but Marcus didn't feel like he had won. He felt like he had survived. The first week was uneventful. He did his job, stood his post, maintained his professionalism. He saw William once in the corridor. They didn't speak, but William gave him a small nod. A silent acknowledgement. It was on the 8th day that Marcus saw her again. He was standing outside the family dining room when Camilla appeared at the end of the hallway. She was alone this time. No attendants, no staff. Just her. She walked slowly toward him. Marcus felt his heart rate increase but kept his expression neutral. Every instinct told him to prepare for confrontation. For another battle, she stopped a few feet away. For a long moment, They simply looked at each other. Then something unexpected happened. "Sergeant Hale," she said quietly, "ma'am. I wanted to speak with you. Privately, if you have a moment." Marcus was stunned, but he nodded. Of course. They walked together to a small alcove away from the main corridor. Away from security cameras? Away from listening ears? Camilla stood with her back straight, hands folded in front of her. When she spoke, her voice was different, softer, almost vulnerable. "I owe you an apology." Marcus blinked. Of all the things he had expected, this wasn't one of them. "You were doing your job," Camilla continued. "Following orders, and I responded poorly. I allowed my pride to cloud my judgment." She met his eyes directly. "What happened afterward? The complaint? The article? That was wrong. I should have stopped it. I didn't." Marcus didn't know what to say. Was this genuine? Or another tactic? Camilla seemed to sense his doubt. "You have no reason to believe me. I understand that. But I need you to know something." She paused. "This family is complicated. There are factions, loyalties, ancient grudges, and new ambitions. Sometimes we forget that people like you get caught in the middle. People like me," Marcus asked carefully. "People who are simply trying to do the right thing." Camilla's expression was weary. "William trusts you. That trust is rare, invaluable. I was threatened by it. I was afraid of what it represented. And now I'm trying to be better, to do better." She took a slow breath. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I'm simply asking that we move forward professionally, that we treat each other with the respect we both deserve." Marcus studied her face. He saw something there he hadn't seen before. Not just age, but exhaustion. The weight of maintaining a perfect image. The loneliness of always being watched, always judged. "I appreciate you saying that," Marcus said finally. "It takes courage to apologize." Camilla smiled slightly. "Less courage than it took to stand in my way." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Camilla extended her hand. Marcus shook it. Her grip was firm, sincere. "Thank you, Sergeant," she said. Then she walked away, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts. That evening, Marcus went home and told Sarah everything. She listened with wide eyes. "Do you believe her?" she asked. "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "But I think she meant it. At least in that moment. Will things change?" Marcus thought about William's words. About his mother? About real loyalty? Maybe, maybe not. But I realized something today. This job was never just about following orders. It was about standing up for what's right, even when it costs you something. Even when it's scary. Sarah smiled. "And are you going to keep doing that?" "Yes," Marcus said without hesitation. "Because that's who I am. Not because of the uniform. Not because of the title, but because it matters." Months passed. The palace continued its routines. Tourists came and went. The royal family appeared at events, smiled for cameras, played their roles. Marcus remained at his post. Some days were easy. Some were hard. He encountered Camilla occasionally in the corridors. They exchanged polite greetings, professional courtesies. The tension between them had eased, though it never fully disappeared. William continued to trust him, to rely on him. That meant everything. One afternoon, nearly a year after the confrontation, Marcus was standing guard when a young recruit approached him nervously. "Excuse me, Sergeant? Can I ask you something?" "Of course." The young guard hesitated. "I heard a story. About you. About something that happened last year. About standing up too." He stopped, unsure how to continue. Marcus understood. "You want to know if it's true?" "Yes, sir." Marcus smiled slightly. "It's true. All of it. And would you do it again?" Marcus didn't have to think about his answer. Every single time, the young guard nodded slowly, absorbing this. Even knowing the consequences, especially knowing the consequences, because that's what makes it meaningful. Anyone can do the right thing when it's easy. The real test is what you do when everything's on the line. The young guard thanked him and walked away. But Marcus could see the impact of those words in his eyes. That night, as Marcus walked home through London's quiet streets, he thought about everything that had happened. The confrontation, the battle, the apology, the resolution. He had been tested, pushed to his limits, forced to choose between safety and principle. And he had chosen principle. Not because he was particularly brave, not because he was special, but because when the moment came, he couldn't live with himself if he had chosen otherwise. Sarah was waiting for him at home, as always. She hugged him tight. "Good day?" she asked. Marcus thought about the young recruit, about the trust in William's eyes, about the quiet dignity of standing guard over something bigger than himself. "Yes," he said, "a very good day." Because in the end, that's what loyalty really meant. Not blind obedience, not unquestioning service, but having the courage to protect what mattered, even when the cost was high, especially when the cost was high. And as Marcus settled into his evening, he knew that whatever came next, whatever challenges awaited, he would face them the same way, with honor, with integrity. And with the quiet strength that comes from knowing you did the right thing, that was enough. That was everything.